Welcome to another episode of 6th Plymouth District edition of Crosstalk with State Representative Josh Cutler. The idea of this particular program, again, we have another one that is with another representative. The idea is to kind of give you an idea as to what your local legislators are doing up at the State House for you within the district. Mr. Cutler.
All right. Thank you, Kevin. Great to be back.
Always
glad you kept it together for the intro because I wasn't sure.
He's always questioning me when it comes to the intro because he thinks I'm going to stumble, but I usually practice for about a half hour before he shows up in studio. And looking forward to this conversation because there was a flurry of activity for the end of the formal legislative session that ended just recently. Yeah, just recently. And we have a lot of things that we can talk about that...
we have a lot to catch up on. I have a whole...
Talking about the FY 2017 budget, the vetoes, the overrides, the knockdown, drag-out battles in the chamber, all the good stuff.
All that good stuff.
All that good stuff. Where do you want to start? If you want to kind of give kind of a highlight as to the days leading up to the final votes, what was it like?
Sure. Well, I think the first place to start would be with the budget, which is probably the single biggest thing that we do as a legislature. We have to pass a balanced budget every year. And I'm very pleased with the end result. You never get everything that you want in a budget. It's always a give and take and a compromise. But we passed a budget that was a very bipartisan budget that came in still came in a fiscally conservative manner, but also managed to make some key investments in areas that I think are important to me and I think are probably important to a lot of folks out there, in terms of education and local aid, substance abuse, early education, homelessness. We were able to address some of those issues and still keep the bottom line to, I believe, a 1.7% increase over the past year, which is a pretty, a modest increase in spending over the year to year. So I think it was a good budget. It was passed almost unanimously, not quite, but just about. And Governor Baker signed the budget, as is every governor's want. They veto certain line items, and as is our want, we will take up those vetoes, and some of them will try to override and restore the funding. And that's became part of the busyness of the last few days of session, is working to restore funding for certain line items that are important to folks. There's a long list that would probably bore everyone to tears, but some of the things that people contacted me about pretty often were things like funding for our local cultural councils, funding for our formula grants for our councils on aging, Alzheimer's support programs. So a lot of important things in the budget. And so working to try to restore funding to those was one of the big things that we were trying to wrap up as the session came to an end. To override the veto requires a 2/3 vote, roll call vote, so it has to be done before the session formally ends. And so it was we were in on Saturday and Sunday, the last 2 days, July 30th and 31st. And pleased to say I think we got almost everything done, and nothing like wait until the end. But it got done, and I'm pretty pleased with overall with the budget and some of the major legislation that we can talk about in a second that we were able to get passed. So I think it was a good, productive session. Started off slow, picked up speed, and it was exciting at the end.
One of the things that you had pushed for, one of the things you had brought forth was the school aid boost.
Yes.
And that was one of the things, just personally, as when you brought it forth, we had a conversation about it, boosting it from $20 per pupil to up to $55. The thought was that depending on some of the movement, it might get cut, but it did not, did it?
No, so it did not. So that was probably, if I look back and said, what is the best thing out of this year's budget? If I had to pick just one thing, I would pick that. And so in a nutshell, basically we were able to increase Chapter 70, which is the primary way that the state gives money back to our cities and towns for schools. That's the primary vehicle. There's other line items as well, but this is by far the single most important one. And so Chapter 70, is allocated based on a formula. Again, It's not political. It's based on a formula. It's based on numbers and math and statistics and so forth. And it's a complicated formula. And, there's always a debate about whether the formula is fair to suburban districts versus urban districts versus rural districts and so forth. And that's a debate that we have almost every year. But what we all agree upon is we want to get as much funding as we can back to our local school districts so they can make the best decisions to educate our kids. In the past, we've seen very limited increases in Chapter 70 aid for our cities and towns for the vast majority of schools like Whitman-Hanson or Pembroke or Duxbury, or really all around the South Shore for the most part. And that has to do with, a lot of factors, one of which is our student population isn't really increasing. In some cases it's actually decreasing or staying flat. But so the biggest issue, frankly, the biggest way that we can try to improve that situation is to adjust what's called the minimum per pupil increment, which is a way that the state guarantees that every school district, regardless of how many kids you have or what your budget is going to see some modest increase every year because everyone's costs go up. Just keeping the lights on, paying for teacher salaries.
Right.
Those costs go up every year, even if there's slightly fewer kids than the year before. So having the minimum per pupil increment is a way to help soften that. So in years past, that number was $25. So literally it was $25 times the number of students, and that was what you were guaranteed as an increase. So we're working with a figure of $25, which in and of itself is not really sufficient to keep up with inflationary costs and contractual costs, which are mostly beyond the control of our local school officials, and yet they go up every year. So trying to increase that number has been a perpetual cause and something that I've been trying to work on ever since I was elected. And our school committee members and everyone in the community, it was their primary concern. So 2 years ago we worked on this. The governor at the time had cut it from 25 down to 20, so actually making a tough situation even a little bit worse. And we were able to restore it back to 25. This year we had our sights set a little bit higher, and so we actually led an effort, and I was proud to be the one who drafted a letter and helped to lead this effort to try to ask for an increase up to $50 per pupil, to double it. And we had more than 70 lawmakers of both parties signing on to that effort to try to increase this per pupil formula. And so when the budget came out, we were very, very, very pleased to see that they actually went a little bit beyond our ask and actually increased it to $55 per pupil. So it was $5 more than we even asked for, which was just incredibly great news. So that increase stuck, and the governor, to his credit, he didn't veto it, he didn't try to reduce it, and the legislature stuck by it in the Senate, and so that number stayed throughout the budget process, and was signed into law by the governor. So that's really great news. It's going to mean for the towns in my district at least $100,000 extra than what we would have had if not. For bigger towns, it'll obviously be more. It's just based on the number of students. But for Whitman-Hanson, I believe the number is $140,000 extra that we wouldn't have had otherwise. So, that's going to really make that's a real difference maker. It's something that we've been working on for a long time, and so it's a great victory for our local schools, and it's great to see the legislature and the governor working together to try to make that happen. So that's probably the thing I'm most proud of. A lot of other good things in the budget, but that's probably at the top of the list, is getting that Chapter 70 funds. And I know when I start to explain, I know I probably lose, our ratings went down because it's a tedious process with the formula, but it's important stuff.
And it's important for folks to know that their local legislators are up at Beacon Hill and fighting for those needed local aid funds to be able to give more to our students and towards education.
And I think it's important to know, here on the South Shore, it's not a Democrat versus Republican thing. I mean, I was proud to lead this effort, but, Representative Deal from Whitman and Senator Brady from Brockton, and frankly, all of our South Shore colleagues, Senator DiMacedo, Representative Cantwell, Representative Cutler, the whole team, everyone was united in this.
What an effort.
It was a bipartisan effort, it really was. So.
Okay. I'm going to jump around a little bit here.
Yeah, jump around.
Talk a little bit about...
literally jump around. If you.
I don't know if we want to have the cameras follow me do that, but the Municipal Modernization Bill, which you fondly called, as we were talking before sitting in front of the cameras, the Weed Whacker Bill. So
that was Governor Baker's term. I don't want to steal his metaphor, but I thought it was kind of a good one. So yes.
Why would you use that metaphor? What was the explanation behind that?
So today, this week, the governor signed what's called the Municipal Modernization Bill. It's now the Municipal Modernization Law, which was a lengthy document, 125 pages, filled with ways to streamline state government, cut red tape, reduce bureaucracy, and basically try to give more tools to our local elected officials, our selectmen, our school committee members, our planning board members, and so forth. I was a selectman for 3 years, and I served on the planning board for 4 years, so I can appreciate very much. There's just things that you have to do that state government makes you do that maybe aren't always necessary. And is there a better way to do this? Is there a more efficient way to do this? Can we streamline this? So they collected a lot of ideas, and most of the ideas came from cities and towns across Massachusetts. I think there were hundreds and hundreds of ideas submitted, and they were culled into this bill, and it went through the legislative process, and the legislature added some aspects as well. And the end result is a bill that really I think will be a great way to offer new tools to our local municipal officials to help them do the job that they need to do.
Streamline government.
In a way that's going to be more effective. Some of the areas were, cutting out statutes and requirements that may not be necessary anymore. Others were giving new tools and new authority to local officials to let them make the decision, because not every decision needs to be made at the state level. And there's other some innovative things, and a lot of them were very picayune kind of detail-oriented things about allowing not uncapping what a town can put in its stabilization fund, which again, there's not probably too many people that are worried staying up nights thinking about that.
No.
But for the few people that are, it makes a big difference, and it means that you might have to have a special town meeting in the fall to address an issue because you had to do that, whereas now you may not have to. So assessors are going to love it, and town moderators are going to love it, but now everyone should love it because it may make life a little bit easier all around. The governor used the metaphor weed whacker because he was, I think, thinking about in terms of regulations are like weeds and they can kind of grow, and so this was an opportunity to whack some of those weeds and to try to cut it back, which I thought was kind of
good analogy.
A good analogy. I have to his credit, he used the weed whacker analogy for that, and then when we were talking about the energy bill, he had his analogy about the combo
Talk about
platter.
that next.
The combo platter. All right, well, I don't want to step on my story there, but
Okay.
so it's got some good analogies. So municipal modernization bill was just signed into law this week. It'll go into effect right away, and there's a lot of different tools on there that will help our cities and towns to function more efficiently. And I think kudos to them because they are the ones that came up with these ideas, and great job by the legislature and also the administration and kind of working together to make it all happen.
Let's talk about the economic development bill. What was the idea and purpose behind that? What will that help?
So it's been for the last couple sessions we've done an annual economic development drill, basically trying to create jobs and lay the groundwork for expanding industries in a variety of sectors, and trying to foster innovation and economic development. That's why it's called the Economic Development Bill. Governor Baker filed it originally, and we made some additions to it. There's a lot of things in there that will help try to spur innovation. A big part of it was providing funding for what's called MassWorks, which is a grants formula that basically doles out money to cities and towns on a competitive basis for local infrastructure type projects. And in fact, here in Hanson, that's something we're looking at right now. I've had meetings with Hanson Town Administrator Michael McHugh and some of the selectmen about some of the ways, some of the needs that we have here in Hanson to try to address, specifically down at the Plymouth County Hospital or on Route 27 in South Hanson, trying to potentially look at that as a source to help with some of these infrastructure needs that we want, or some of these projects that we want to tackle. But MassWorks, is a statewide grants program that really provides infrastructure funding in a lot of ways. So providing funding for that was a key part of it. There's some other things that will help. Like for instance, one of the things I wanted to call your attention to was a new provision that was passed, that's now law, that will bring Massachusetts in line with a number of other states that already offer this, which is to offer a tax deduction for parents who are putting money away for their college savings plans for their kids. So basically known as everyone knows them as a 529 plan. So I have one for my son, and I put $20. I probably should put more, but put $25 a weekend. And but so that now for the first time will be tax deductible up to $1,000 for individuals, and I believe it's $2,000 for couples. So that's a nice way to help people incentivize to put away money for their kids' college savings, which is a big issue we're dealing with on another level, just the cost of higher ed. But so that was part of the economic development bill that was passed, trying to help people with college savings plans. So a lot of good stuff in there, and I think it was another one of those bills where there was really a team effort. You saw a lot of bipartisanship, people trying to work together to get something done. So
All right. Let's move to energy. It's kind of something that's on a lot of people's mind. We know that it was recently announced in the past 6 months that Pilgrim, the nuclear power plant, is going to be going offline soon. So I think
June of 2019.
Yeah. So
soon, which is very soon.
It's like right around the corner.
Right.
And so I guess there was a conversation regarding diversifying energy here in the Bay State?
Sure. So energy is a vital and very complex issue, as everybody knows. I was at the start of the session. I pointed to the Telecommunications, Utilities, and Energy Committee at the State House, which is something I had sought out because it was something I was very much interested in, and also it's an important committee, and I knew that there'd be a lot of important legislation going through that this term, and that's turned out to be the case. We had a major energy bill, or two energy bills, one dealing with solar net metering, which was already dealt with earlier this session, but then a major energy bill dealing with trying to diversify our energy portfolio. As you mentioned, Kevin, there's a couple key issues. One is we're losing certain energy sources. One is Pilgrim, and we also have coal-fired plants that we're losing that are going offline. Brayton Point is one of them. So we're losing some of our energy sources. We need to bring on new energy sources, but we also want to do it in a way that's, if we can bring in more renewable energy, that's going to be a win-win. So this bill that was just passed, and actually, again, was just signed into law this week by Governor Baker, and I got to attend the bill signing ceremony. This bill does a lot of things. I think a couple of the key things I would point out is, number one, it's going to allow procurement of hydropower. So basically, that's a renewable energy that's very stable, cost affordable. Canada creates a lot of hydropower. New York does as well. Some of it's done here in Mass. So we'll be importing hydropower to help feed that energy need. We're also paving the way for the first time, not just in the state, but frankly in the nation, for a new sector called for offshore wind. We've seen wind turbines locally.
Okay, yep.
Okay, we've seen Cape Wind, which hasn't really worked. We're talking about something very different, which is called offshore wind, which is located in our federal waters. So we're talking 15, 20 miles offshore. So not something, you probably couldn't even see it with the naked eye. But in federal waters primarily off the south coast of Massachusetts, there is area that has been identified by the experts as prime area for wind energy. In fact, I think
they've done testing and
they've done testing. Yeah, the Bureau of Ocean Management, which is a federal agency, has done this. And I think I've seen it referred to as the Saudi Arabia of wind. Just for whatever environmental reasons, there is just a tremendous amount of wind there. And so they've gone through a whole identification process of identifying parcels. They pre-selected them because they all saw what happened with the Cape Wind scenario, which even after 10 years is still not
settled.
Mm-hmm. So they brought the stakeholders in at the beginning of the process. They brought the fishermen in. They brought the people who are concerned with the environmental aspects, with marine species. They brought all those folks in at the beginning of the process instead of waiting till the end, and they identified areas in the federal water, in the federal system, that would be appropriate for wind, and move forward with that. And so then here at the state level, even though it's federal waters, there's still things that had to be done here at the state level to allow for that procurement to happen, and also the physical thing of actually getting it from out there
to a platform, or whether it's a series
to the south coast. So it's actually they're going to reuse the area, I believe, in Brayton Point in the south coast, where that's actually going to be where they're going to hook up through the south coast, New Bedford, in that area. Okay. So it's going to create this whole new offshore wind industry. It's going to take some years to get going, but we've allowed this nascent industry to be born essentially here in Massachusetts, and I think it's going to be sort of a longer term payoff than the hydropower, which we can start importing very quickly. Yep. But that will come online and hope to fill, back to my analogy that from the governor, the combo platter that we were talking about,
right? Because
we want to have this diversity of energy sources. We have natural gas, which is a huge part of our energy, and we need natural gas. There's a whole debate about pipelines and stuff, and that wasn't part of this bill, but that's, regardless, is going to be an important part of our energy portfolio. But we're now diversifying it, and hey, by the way, we're also, we're saying goodbye to coal, which is a dirty type of energy, and replacing it with hydropower, which is a clean, renewable type of energy. So that's that makes some major progress in achieving our goals for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and reducing our carbon footprint. So those are the two main things in the bill. There's some other parts of it as well. You mentioned the thing about Pilgrim Nuclear Power Plant. One of the things that locally we were concerned about, and been trying to be mindful of is throughout this decommissioning process, we want to make sure that the ratepayers, all of us who pay the utility rates, and the taxpayers more broadly in the Commonwealth are protected while this decommissioning process happens, because it's an expensive process and it can take 60 years before it's everything's fully dissipated. So making sure that the funds are there so that the company, Entergy, is taking care of that and not leaving us basically holding the bag. So that's been a concern that we've had for a while, as soon as we learned that Entergy was going offline in Pilgrim. So the energy bill does include a decommissioning commission, a panel, if you will, that will
kind of oversee this process.
21 stakeholders throughout the region, including representatives from the town of Plymouth, people appointed by the legislature, the governor, and so forth, to monitor the decommissioning of Pilgrim. So that will be, a helpful point of view to try to shine a light and make sure that if there are issues that crop up, we can address them. And there's still some more to be done on that front, but that was an important first step. So I'm using a lot of my time here on one issue, but that's an important issue, and the energy bill will really, I think, be something we can look back and say, hey, we made a really smart decision to try to diversify our energy portfolio and did it in a way that was, going to reduce our carbon footprint, but also be mindful of energy prices and trying to make sure we have stability in the marketplace, and that's important too, having stability in the marketplace.
Well, I think at one particular time as a country, we've solely relied on fossil fuels. So, seeing that if we can somehow lead the pack, other states, when it comes to diversifying, different types of energy, that's fantastic.
Yeah, and it just makes economic sense if you think about it. If you have just like a portfolio of stocks and bonds, if you invest just in one kind of stock, you may do great for a while,
right,
but if something happens to that, you're in trouble.
Right.
Whereas if you have a broader, more diverse portfolio, the combo platter, of different types of energy sources, as one gets more expensive, another may drop, you're protected. Mm-hmm. So you have more stability. So I think it just makes sense that we would do that. And the fact that we can make them renewable energy sources is just all the sweeter.
Today's word is combo platter.
Combo platter.
If you haven't guessed it already.
Platter, yeah.
One of the final things before we kind of do some housekeeping in regards to...
I have to do housekeeping around here?
No.
Don't you have...
I'm talking about as far as state representative housekeeping.
Oh, okay.
Some
I do like the housekeeping you did, with the change in background here.
All right, thanks.
I like that. I don't know if our viewers...
No, we've always had that background.
No, this background, but the curtains.
Oh, yeah. You
different.
don't like the pink stuff. Yeah, we got rid of that.
Yeah, there's kind of disco 70s kind of...
Aren't you a child of the 70s, though?
Yeah, I was born in 71, yeah.
Okay, just checking. I'll talk a little bit about Lyme disease, because that's something that a lot of folks have concerns about, and some work done by lawmakers up on Beacon Hill in regards to expanding treatment, getting involved with the health insurance and expanding coverage. Talk about that.
Absolutely. So Lyme disease is probably not something I need to explain for most of our viewers. For whatever reason, here on the South Shore and the South Coast, we've experienced disproportionately high incidence of Lyme disease, which can range from very minor kind of you get a shot or take some pills and you're fine in a couple weeks, to very debilitating, life-changing disease that can literally people end up confined to bed. Their joints ache. It can have a really massive effect. So there's quite a range that we've seen. The problem that we've had, and there's many problems about trying to confront Lyme disease, is for some folks who do have the more severe cases of Lyme disease, one of the things that's been shown to help them is long-term antibiotic treatment. That has been one thing that has helped people who are suffering from long-term effects of Lyme disease. Unfortunately, most insurance companies will not cover long-term antibiotic care, or cover it only for a very short time, and so that makes people either have to pay out of pocket or have to forego it.
Right.
And I can tell you all kinds of stories about people who have made that very decision, and it can cost thousands of dollars and even tens of thousands of dollars to get this over the long period of time. So for the first time, ever since I've been in office, again, I've been co-sponsor of a bill. My colleague, Representative Dave Linsky from Natick, has been filed because I believe his son had Lyme disease, and so it became a passion of his to make sure that insurance companies did cover long-term antibiotic care of Lyme disease. It's been a battle every year, and we haven't been able to get it done. This year, through the budget process, we were able to add the Lyme disease coverage to an outside section of the budget, and made it through the House, made it through the Senate. The governor did veto it initially, and it came back to the House, and we actually got the votes to override that veto, and so now it is law, and it will take effect this year, so that for the first time ever here in Massachusetts, people who are suffering from Lyme disease can get insurance company coverage for long-term antibiotic treatment if their doctors prescribe it. So again, it's medical. This is based on the medicine, not politics. It's the doctors that should make a decision, not the insurance companies. And that is now going to happen for the first time because of this section, which, credit to my colleague Rep. Linsky. I was very proud to be a co-sponsor of that bill. Representative Cantwell has been a leader in this as well. And so, again, this is a very, significant change for people who are suffering from Lyme disease. And we had a forum over in Pembroke last month, had a couple of a doctor from Harvard Medical School, had someone from DPH come in and talk about what's going on with Lyme disease. And we had, I thought we have a pretty good turnout, but there was like 60 people that showed up and crammed into the Pembroke Library room to hear about this, because there were so many people that this has impacted. And so that was really eye-opening for me. So.
Okay. We just got a couple of moments left here. Give you an opportunity to talk about looking for interns.
Oh yeah, right. So we're doing, people, I know there's a lot of high school and college students out there, or my college kids are heading back to school, but high school kids starting up and want to put the word out. It's a campaign season. It's a presidential election season. Lots of excitement in the air. But here locally, it's also time to gear up for re-election efforts, and we're looking for kids who might be interested in learning about what it's like to work on a grassroots campaign on a local level, at the state representative level. It's not as dramatic as a presidential campaign, but there's a lot of value in it. It's a great experience, and so if there are students out there who might be interested in doing so, we encourage you to reach out, and we'd love to show you and have you part of our team. So you can reach out. My website is joshcutler.com.
Re-election kickoff, when is that happening?
So yeah, it's time to run for re-election. I'm honored to serve and got to gear up for another season. So I'll be having a kickoff event on Friday, September 9th at the Duxbury American Legion Hall with some of my colleagues. Speaker Pro Tem Pat Haddad will be coming as my featured guest, along with Plymouth County Treasurer Tom O'Brien. Okay. So we'll have more details on that. But that's Friday, September 9th.
And again, if folks want to find out more about what you've been working on and what you're doing?
The best way to reach me is through the website, joshcutler.com, or Facebook, Twitter, or at the State House through my office as well. So lots of ways to work.
Another great program.
Thank you, sir.
We want to thank you very much for tuning in to another episode of Crosstalk, the 6th Plymouth District edition.
Bam!
Until next time.
Nailed it.